"Daddy, is she gonna fall?" The question came from the tiny voice beside him, and Carter Thompson's heart skipped a beat as he looked up. There she was, clinging white-knuckled to the railing of the Ferris wheel platform, frozen in place, not even 2 steps off the ground. The rest of the line behind her was starting to grumble, but she didn't seem to notice. Her chest was rising too fast. Her eyes locked on the first cart swinging gently in front of her, wide and panicked. Carter bent down to his 5-year-old daughter, Lila, brushing a curl off her forehead. "No, baby, she's not gonna fall. She's just scared." Lila tilted her head. "Of a Ferris wheel?" He gave her a soft smile. "Some people are scared of heights, but she's a grown-up." "Exactly." Carter straightened, turned to the woman, and without thinking, walked up the ramp. "Hi," he said gently, voice low so no one else could hear. "You okay?" The woman turned her head slightly, just enough for him to see her face, and wow. She was beautiful, not in the glossy, runway way. More like she'd walked out of a dream. Dark brown hair in a sleek ponytail, gold earrings catching the sunlight, and eyes hazel with a hint of green that were wide and glassy with fear. She swallowed, clutching the railing like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the earth. "I can't move." He stepped closer. "It's okay. You don't have to move yet. Just breathe." She did, shakily. Her voice was tight. "I thought I could do this. It's just a Ferris wheel." "Hey, it's not just anything if it scares you." He offered a hand. "I'm Carter. That's my daughter, Lila. She's 5 and already braver than me." That got a twitch of a smile from her. "I'm Bianca." "Hi, Bianca." His voice stayed calm, steady. "How about I ride with you? Just one time around. I'll sit right next to you. We'll talk about anything but how high we are." "Deal." She hesitated. "I promise I won't let anything happen to you," he said quietly. Bianca stared at his hand. Then slowly, very slowly, she reached out and took it. Her palm was cold, but her grip didn't shake once they were inside the cart. He kept his promise. He didn't mention the height. He made her laugh, talking about Lila's obsession with flamingos and how she once tried to bring one home from the zoo using a plastic beach bucket. Bianca let out a real laugh, light, surprised, like she hadn't heard one in a while. And when the cart reached the very top, she squeezed her eyes shut. Carter took her hand again. "We're almost halfway through. You're doing amazing." Her eyes fluttered open, and she looked at him. Their faces were close. The wind swept a strand of hair across her cheek, and without thinking, he tucked it back. "You didn't have to help me," she said softly. I froze. It was embarrassing. I didn't do it because I had to. I did it because you looked like you needed someone. Bianca looked away, and for a second, Carter thought maybe he'd crossed a line. But then she whispered, "Thank you." They got off to scattered applause from the small crowd that had been watching. Lila ran up and grabbed Carter's hand. "See, told you she wouldn't fall." Bianca crouched down awkwardly in her expensive-looking flats. "Hi, Lila. You were very brave to go on that ride." "I wasn't scared," Lila said proudly. "My daddy says if you're scared, you just hold someone's hand and it helps." Bianca looked up at Carter, her expression unreadable. He's right. They walked together through the fair for a while, the soft sound of music and the smell of popcorn in the air. Carter learned that Bianca had just moved to town. She didn't say why, and he didn't push. She asked about Lila's mom, and he told her the truth. She'd left when Lila was 2. No drama, no heartbreak, just gone. Bianca's brows furrowed. "That must have been hard." "It was," he said. "But Lila, she's my world." Bianca looked at the little girl holding a blue balloon and giggling at a clown. "She's lucky to have you." They ended the evening with cotton candy and a carousel ride. Bianca didn't ride that one, just watched. Carter walked her to her car, and when she clicked her key fob, he blinked at the sleek black Mercedes coupe. Bianca caught a surprise. "It's Elise," she said quickly, almost like she was embarrassed. He didn't care. "Thanks for not laughing when I screamed on the Ferris wheel." She laughed again and looked at him. "You didn't scream. I thought about it." She hesitated before opening her door. "You know, I haven't laughed like that in a long time." Carter smiled. "Then I hope I see you again." Bianca paused. "What are you doing tomorrow?" He blinked. Taking Lila to school and then heading to work." "Where do you work?" "Construction. Site manager. Pays the bills." He shrugged like it was nothing. Bianca tilted her head. "Would you want to meet for coffee?" "Just us." He looked surprised. "Yeah, I'd like that." "Okay." She bit her lip like she couldn't believe she'd just asked. There's a place near the river walk. 11. I'll be there. He smiled. I'll try not to bring my fear of espresso machines. She laughed again, and this time, it felt easier. When she drove off, Carter stood there with Lila's sticky hand in his and couldn't stop smiling. He didn't know that Bianca Sanders wasn't just new to town. He didn't know she was the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar hospitality empire. And he definitely didn't know she was already falling for the man who calmed her fear of heights without ever needing to know how high she actually stood. Carter checked his reflection in the side mirror of his truck, ran a hand through his hair, and muttered, "You look like a man who hasn't slept in a year." He wasn't wrong. Between early mornings at the construction site and late nights helping Lila with her alphabet books, he hadn't had a full night's sleep in weeks. But somehow, remembering the way Bianca's eyes lit up when she laughed made the exhaustion feel less heavy. He parked 2 blocks away from the Riverwalk Cafe because the closer meters were all taken, not because he was nervous or anything, and walked the rest of the way, the brisk autumn air biting at his neck. The cafe had a quiet charm, all glass windows and warm brick, with ivy climbing up one side like it had been there forever. Inside, it was calm. People sat hunched over laptops or sipping from tall mugs, the kind Carter never ordered because he didn't know what half the menu meant. Bianca was already there. She sat by the window, her coat draped over the back of her chair, a cup in front of her that steamed faintly. She wore a camel-colored blazer over a cream blouse, her hair pulled into a low twist that looked like it belonged in a magazine. She glanced up as he approached, and something in her face softened. "You came," she said as he slid into the seat across from her. "I said I would." She smiled, but her fingers curled slightly around her cup, like she was bracing herself. "I wasn't sure. You seemed surprised when I asked." "I was," he admitted. "Not because I didn't want to. Just, I guess I didn't think you'd be interested." Her eyes searched his. "Why not?" He leaned back. "You seem like the kind of woman who has options." She tilted her head. "And you don't." "I work 12-hour shifts, drive a truck with a dent the size of Kansas in the back bumper, and I haven't bought new shoes in 3 years." He gave a half shrug. "Options aren't really part of the deal." Bianca stirred her drink with the tiny spoon beside it. "Maybe I'm not looking for options. Maybe I'm looking for something real." Carter watched her for a moment. "You always this honest?" "Only when it matters." He couldn't help it. He smiled. "So what brought you to this town?" "Not the Ferris wheel, I'm guessing." She hesitated, then leaned forward slightly. "I needed a change. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere no one expects me to be." "Running from something?" "More like running towards something I haven't figured out yet." He nodded. "Fair enough." A waitress passed, and Carter ordered a black coffee, no sugar, no cream. Bianca raised an eyebrow. "You don't like flavor?" "I like simple." She looked at him like she was trying to understand something deeper than coffee preferences. "Do you always tell people exactly what you think?" "Only when it matters," he replied. Her lips twitched. Touché. They talked. About things that didn't feel small, but didn't feel too big either. Carter told her about the time Lila tried to make him breakfast and nearly set the toaster on fire. Bianca told him she once got locked in a department store dressing room for 2 hours when she was 17 and didn't tell anyone because she was too proud. He asked her what she did for work. She paused, then said lightly, "I handle hospitality investments. Like hotels. Among other things." He nodded slowly. "Sounds fancy." "Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's spreadsheets and phone calls at 2 in the morning. And yet you still looked like you stepped out of a catalog." She blinked. "You notice that?" "I notice a lot more than people think." Her expression shifted, just slightly, like something had caught her off guard. She glanced at her watch. "I have a meeting in an hour." "In town." She hesitated. Technically, Carter didn't press, but he filed the answer away. "I should head back too. Lila's with her babysitter, but she doesn't like missing snack time." Bianca stood with him. "Would you? Maybe want to come to dinner?" "My place." He blinked. "You cook?" "Not well, but I'm excellent at ordering." He laughed. "Then yeah, sure." She reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek card with an address handwritten across the back. Not printed, not typed, just her careful script. He took it, careful not to smudge the ink. "I'll bring dessert," he said. "I'll make sure the wine's cold." As she walked away, the heels of her boots tapping softly on the pavement, Carter stared at the card. The address wasn't familiar, which was strange in a town this size. He tapped it against his palm, as narrowing slightly. He didn't know it yet, but that address belonged to a gated estate on the edge of town. A place no one ever questioned because no one ever saw who lived there. A place where the woman he thought was just passing through had built a private world she never let anyone into. Until now. The gate opened silently, revealing a long stone driveway lined with lanterns that flickered warmly against the early evening sky. Carter's truck crunched over the gravel, his fingers tightening slightly on the steering wheel as the house came into view. House wasn't the right word. It was a modern estate, sprawling and glass-paneled, perched at the edge of a wooded ridge. A wall of windows reflected the last of the light, and the structure itself curved as if it had been sculpted right out of the hillside. Carter parked to the side, far enough not to block anything, and stepped out with the bakery box balanced in one hand. He'd picked it up on the way chocolate ganache toward, because the girl at the counter said it was fancy enough for a date, but not so fancy that it looked like he was trying to impress a duchess. He hadn't expected this. The front door opened before he could knock. Bianca stood barefoot on the threshold, dark jeans, and a navy silk blouse that caught the light when she moved. Her hair was loose now, falling over one shoulder in soft waves. "You found it," she said, stepping back so he could enter. He crossed the threshold slowly, blinking as his eyes adjusted to the soft amber lighting. The interior was sleek and minimal wood, stone, glass. Everything was curated, calm, expensive. Not a single piece of clutter. "I brought dessert," he said, holding up the box. She smiled lightly. "That might be the most thoughtful thing anyone's brought into this house. No one ever bring you cake? No one ever gets this far." He raised an eyebrow. She gestured toward the open kitchen. "Come on. Dinner's in the oven." "Technically warming, because I didn't cook it. But still." The kitchen was professional grade, with double ovens and a marble island large enough to host a cooking show. Carter set the box down gently. "You live here alone?" he asked. Bianca filled 2 glasses with water. "I do. Don't take this the wrong way, but this place feels like it could have a staff." She handed him a glass. "It could, but I like quiet." He nodded slowly, glancing at the polished concrete floors, the abstract art on the far wall, the glass vase holding a single white orchid. "This what hospitality investment buys you?" Bianca didn't flinch. Among other things. He didn't push. Instead, he followed her to the dining nook tucked beside a floor-to-ceiling window, where city lights blinked in the distance through the trees. 2 plates were already set: roasted chicken, wild rice, and some kind of vegetable medley that looked like it belonged in a magazine. He took a bite. "This is the best food I've ever had from an oven that wasn't mine." She laughed softly. "That's because you've never had a private chef prepare leftovers." "You have a chef?" "Not full-time. Just someone who stocks the fridge when I'm too busy to remember I need to eat." Carter studied her. "You ever gonna tell me what you actually do? You're not going to guess? Does it have anything to do with buying buildings that look like this?" Bianca hesitated, then set her fork down. "I run a company. Sanders Holdings. We manage luxury properties, worldwide resorts, estates, private clubs." He blinked. "Wait. Sanders. As in the S in SH Global." Her eyes flicked to him. "You know it. Every construction site I've ever worked on has one of your logos on at least one crane." She leaned back slightly. "So now you know?" Carter let out a quiet breath, then nodded once. "Okay." She watched him carefully. "That's it. No questions." "I've got one," he said slowly. "Why didn't you tell me?" Bianca looked away for the first time. "Because the moment people know, they stop seeing me. They see the title, the money, the power, and suddenly, I'm not a person anymore. I'm a transaction." He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "I didn't think I'd be eating dinner tonight in a house with its own security gate. But I'm still glad I came." She looked up at him. "I don't care about the title," he added. "I care that you didn't run when the Ferris wheel scared you. I care that you asked me to coffee instead of disappearing. I care that you made space for me in a world you clearly don't let people into." Bianca's throat moved as she swallowed. "You're not intimidated?" "I'm not small, Bianca. I've had to be bigger than I ever wanted to be since the moment I became a dad." Her voice softened. "Tell me about her." "Lila." He smiled. "She's obsessed with dinosaurs this week. I caught her digging up the backyard yesterday, looking for fossils." "Does she know about this?" "Us." He hesitated. "There's no us yet." Bianca's expression faltered. "I'm not saying I don't want there to be," he added quickly. "But I need to know you're not just looking for someone who made you laugh on a Ferris wheel." She stood slowly and walked to the window, arms crossed. He rose and followed, standing beside her. I haven't let anyone in for a long time, she said quietly. My world is built on control, precision, protection. He looked at her. And what happens when you meet someone who doesn't fit that mold? Her eyes met his, something raw flickering behind them. Then I either make space for them or lose them. The silence stretched between them, thick but not uncomfortable. I don't need you to prove anything, he said. But I do need to know that this whatever's starting between us is real. Bianca turned to face him fully, her voice barely above a whisper. It is. I didn't expect it, but it is. Carter's hand found hers, fingers tangling gently. Then let's see where it goes. Neither of them moved for a long time, the city lights flickering behind them like stars that had decided to settle on Earth. Bianca didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. The rain came hard that Friday night, hammering against the windows of Carter's house as if it wanted in. Inside, the lights were low. Lila was tucked in bed with her stuffed flamingo, and Carter stood in the kitchen drying his hands on a towel, staring at the phone like it might ring. It didn't. He hadn't heard from Bianca in over 2 days. After the night at her estate, things had shifted. They'd shared something quiet but electric, and he'd felt it in the way she looked at him like she was letting go of something heavy. But then she'd called the next afternoon, voice clipped and careful, saying she needed to fly to Chicago for a meeting that couldn't wait. No details. No return date. Just a promise to call. She hadn't. Carter tossed the towel over the sink and grabbed his keys. He didn't know what he was planning, maybe a drive to clear his head, but the knock on the door froze him in place. He opened it to find Bianca standing there, drenched, her coat soaked through, and her shoes muddy. I shouldn't be here, she said before he could speak. But I had to be. He stepped aside without a word, and she walked in, water trailing behind her. I was in Chicago, she said, turning to him. We closed on a resort deal. It was supposed to be a success. My board was thrilled. But I couldn't stop thinking about you. About Lila. About this place. Carter leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You disappeared. I know. Her voice cracked. I've spent my life making sure no one could reach me when I left. That used to feel like power. But this time, it just felt like being alone. He didn't move. I've been careful for so long, she continued. Careful not to let anyone matter. Because when they do, they can hurt you. They can leave. I watched that happen to my mother. I watched her give everything she had to a man who walked away when the money dried up. I told myself I'd never let someone have that kind of access to me. And now, I'm terrified, she whispered. Because you already do. Carter's voice was calm. I'm not going to walk away. You could. You have every reason to. I've been private, guarded. I didn't trust you with the truth until I had no choice. You're wrong, he said. You trusted me on that Ferris wheel. You trusted me when you didn't even know my last name. She looked down, blinking hard. He crossed the room, stopped in front of her. You don't get to decide this alone. I'm not some passing moment in your life. I'm standing here, asking you to be honest with me, not perfect. Just real. Bianca looked up, breath catching. I don't know how to be normal. I'm not asking for normal. I'm asking for honest. Messy. Human. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. I wrote this on the flight home. I didn't know if I'd give it to you. He took it slowly, opening it. Inside was a letter not typed, not polished. Just her handwriting. I'm in love with you. He looked up. I thought I needed to protect myself, she said. But I needed you more. He dropped the letter and kissed her, pulling her in like he'd waited years to feel something that real. Her hands gripped his shirt, and she didn't pull away. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. You're soaked. I didn't want to wait till morning. He smiled. Let's get you warm. He led her to the couch, wrapped her in a blanket, and made tea. She curled up beside him, bare feet tucked beneath her, and for the first time, she looked like she belonged in something soft, something lived in. Later, when Lila shuffled into the room rubbing her eyes, Bianca sat up gently. Did I wake you? She asked. Lila shook her head. I heard voices. Carter reached for her, but Lila walked straight to Bianca and climbed into her lap without hesitation. You came back, she said. Bianca held her carefully. I did. You're staying? She looked at Carter. If it's okay. He nodded. It's more than okay. Bianca kissed the top of Lila's head and whispered, then yes. I'm staying. A week later, the town was buzzing with rumors. The The reclusive owner of the estate had been seen at the local diner with a little girl on her lap and a man across from her who looked at her like she'd hung the stars. But Carter didn't care. He had Bianca beside him, Lila's hand in his, and a love stronger than anything he'd ever expected. They were building something now, no contracts, no negotiations. Just a life. One where no one had to hide, and no one had to be alone. And that, in every way, was more than enough. The ballroom was lit like a dream, warm golden chandeliers overhead, soft jazz drifting through the air, and waiters in crisp uniforms weaving through the crowd with trays of champagne. Carter stood near the entrance in a tailored charcoal suit that Bianca had picked out for him, though he'd insisted she didn't need to. She had anyway, and when he saw himself in the mirror earlier that evening, he couldn't deny it. He looked like he belonged, even if part of him still didn't believe he did. Bianca was across the room, deep in conversation with a woman in an emerald gown. Her posture was relaxed, but her eyes flicked to Carter every few minutes, like she needed the reassurance that he was still there. When their gazes met, she excused herself and crossed the floor, her navy dress catching the light with every step. Her hair was swept up tonight, pinned in a way that exposed the curve of her neck, and for a moment, Carter forgot they were surrounded by hundreds of people. "You're being quiet," she said, stopping in front of him. "I'm trying not to knock over $1 million ice sculpture," he replied, nodding toward the centerpiece across the room. "It's only $600,000, she said, "and it's insured." He gave her a look. "That's supposed to make me feel better?" She laughed, low and genuine. "Come with me." She led him through a side door, away from the crowd, down a hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. When they reached a quiet alcove with 2 armchairs and a view of the skyline, she turned to face him. "I wanted you here tonight," she said, her expression serious now. "Not because of the gala. Because this world, my world, it doesn't mean anything if I can't share it with you. I'm standing here, aren't I? I know. But I also know how hard it is for you to be here. I've watched you try to make yourself smaller so you don't draw attention. You don't have to do that. I'm not trying to make myself smaller. I'm trying to understand how I fit into a world that's 10 stories above where I live." Bianca took his hands. "You fit because you're the only person in it who makes it feel honest." He exhaled slowly. "I've been thinking about something." She tilted her head. "I want you to come with me tomorrow. To the site." Her brow lifted slightly. "The construction site?" He nodded. "I want you to see what I build." A smile tugged at her lips. "I'd love that." They stood in silence for a moment, the city glittering behind them. "I've been offered a position," she said quietly. His brows lifted. "Where?" "Here. A permanent base. I'd still travel, but most of the operations would be managed from a new headquarters I'd opened downtown." "You're staying?" "If you want me to." "I want you to," he said without hesitation. "But not because I need you to stay. Because you want to." "I do," she said. "And I want something else, too." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He unfolded it. His name was listed at the top of a proposal: Sanders Holdings, Local Development Division. A partnership. "I don't want to change your life," she said. "I want to build something with you." He looked up. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering us a future." He folded the paper gently and slipped it into his jacket. "You could have just asked me to move in." "That's part 2, she said, stepping closer. "But I didn't want to lead with that after the ice sculpture." He grinned. "I'll think about it." "No, you won't." "No, I won't." They kissed, slow and certain, and when they returned to the ballroom, they walked in hand. No one stared. Or maybe they did. But Carter didn't notice anymore. 3 months later, the new Sanders Holdings development office opened in the heart of downtown. Carter oversaw the design personally, refusing the polished marble Bianca had initially suggested in favor of reclaimed wood and exposed brick. She didn't argue. She liked the way it felt: solid, grounded, full of intention. Lila started kindergarten in the spring, and Bianca showed up to her first school assembly in a linen dress and flat sandals, sitting in the 3rd row with Carter and cheering louder than anyone else when Lila recited her poem about planets. They moved into a townhouse closer to the city, big enough for Lila to have her own playroom, but small enough that Carter didn't feel like he was living in a museum. Bianca insisted on installing a tiny garden in the back, claiming she wanted to grow basil. Carter didn't believe her, but bought the planter boxes anyway. One Saturday morning, While Lila was at a birthday party and the house was unusually quiet, Carter found Bianca sitting on the porch steps, a cup of tea in hand. "You know what I've been thinking about?" she asked without looking up. "What?" "How none of this was supposed to happen." He sat beside her, their shoulders touching. "The Ferris wheel? The whole thing. I was supposed to stay 2 weeks. Fix some property issues. Leave. That was the plan." He took her tea and set it aside before pulling a small box from his pocket. "I had a plan too," he said. "It didn't include you either." Bianca blinked, then looked down at the box. "I didn't think I'd get a second chance," he said. "At love. At building a life that didn't feel like survival." She opened the box slowly. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond set in platinum. "Marry me," he said. "Not because we're supposed to. Not because it's the next step. Just because I can't imagine living a single day without you in it." She didn't answer right away. She looked at him, really looked, as if she were trying to memorize the exact shade of his eyes, the quiet way he waited without pressure. "Yes," she said. And when he slipped the ring onto her finger, she leaned in and whispered, "You didn't even scream this time." His laugh echoed through the porch, and she kissed him again, slow and certain. They married in the backyard with Lila tossing flower petals and a jazz trio playing under the oak tree. There were no ice sculptures, no press, no grand gestures, just vows spoken under string lights and promises made with hands clasped tight. They built their future the same way they'd built everything else together, one choice at a time. And it was perfect.